Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast at cinematropolis.com. And I'm coming at you again with another dCFF Film Festival 2020 interview. Today, we'll be talking with the director-producer of one of the short films that played at the festival, The Chest. And we'll be speaking with the director-producer, Charles Elmore. The Chest is a part of the Okie Shorts Mixtape Volume 2 block and stars Danielle, Evan Ploeger, Dylan Baker, and Becky Ann Baker. And the synopsis, according to the dCFF website, reads, Jessica, a put-upon real estate agent, is forced to work alongside Blake, her merciless and cruel superior, in selling a large real estate to the Steves, a pair of potential buyers. When a tragic accident befalls the pitiless Blake, resulting in his untimely, or maybe deserved, demise, Jessica seizes the opportunity to make the sale on her own by hiding Blake's body. Charles, welcome to the Cinematic Schematic.
Hey, thanks. That's a very bit of a mouthful of a synopsis, huh? I should get in touch with whoever sent them that and tell them that it's a little wordy. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be, I'm thrilled to have the chance to talk about it and for you guys to, give it some, give it some attention or, highlight some of the people that worked on it. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course, Charles. Well, I have to say, we at the Cinemetropolis, we're fans of the short film. Daniel Bokemper did a write-up of this entire shorts block, which is currently live on the website, and we'll link that in the show notes. But he had nothing but good things to say about The Chest this year. Now, cool. To break the ice on this particular short film, could you tell me a little bit about the inspiration? Now, I know in the credits you guys cite, an Edgar Allan Poe story as an influence. What other films or maybe filmmakers inspired your particular take on this short story?
The whole idea kind of started out of a conversation with a couple other filmmaker friends that I work with all the time. And we were talking about doing a sort of anthology that all centered around something involving like a home or finding a home. And when it was, my idea was germinating, I always wondered like, what if, this idea of what if Norman Bates had tried to sell the Bates motel and home like right after he killed Mrs. Bates from Psycho. And that's kind of where I started. So the whole genesis of the idea has always been rooted in a sense of like kind of that classic dark, comedic, elevated, kind of thriller genre that like Hitchcock and Clouseau and these sort of French, classic 60s thrillers kind of filmmakers in that vein, and the very sort of arch chamber pieces like The Uninvited and The Innocents and stuff like that. I could never quite figure out how to make it entertaining, and every time I was coming up with a draft, it kept coming out very like dour and very like serious and brooding. And so I sat on it for a while, and then the writer, Tony DeLesDernier, who I had been long friends with, he was in one of the first films I had made back in 2008. And he had just recently moved back from Chicago, where he graduated from the Second City writing program or, comedy program. That's the program where I guess Amy Poehler and Bill Murray and some pretty famous SNL comedians and other people like the UCB people came out of that school. And so he's very concentrated on comedy writing and stuff like that. And I knew I wanted this to be somewhat comedic and sort of arch in tone to some extent. So I asked if he would want to take the story and rework it and kind of workshop it together and get it in the way that I was wanting to sort of envision it, and let him sort of have fun with the script writing. And so we were always looking at Hitchcock thrillers, these very sort of like almost like Clue, how comedically arch Clue is sometimes, but how the how the audience is in on some of the humor and jokes, but the characters in the movie itself aren't sort of aware of how, ironic they're being or how tongue-in-cheek the characters are being. So, those are kind of our sort of base point or our starting baselines for reference and inspiration. And then Tony's big obsession and our big focus was making sure like everything that was set up had a payoff, and everything that, everything that felt like we had to like hang a lantern on or be specific about, that we were intentional about it, and that there was never any sort of throwaway line or scene or any of that stuff. There's actually like several scenes that we cut out just because we were so focused on like getting cutting anything inessential. So we were very intentional about that. But the starting point was always like a Hitchcock sort of thriller and a Hitchcock kind of comedy. Like, Rope was a huge starting point. Specifically, like, I knew I wanted to have a character's body being hidden in a chest, and what would it be like if people just were constantly like floating around this dead body in a chest. And that's very much the central conceit of Rope, and mixed with a little bit of the sort of sexual tension and dramatic tension of like Vertigo and Psycho. All were sort of the reference points we were circling around.
I think one of the things outside of just the really sharp script, which you've already talked about, was the stellar cast that has a real. Everyone seemed to have a really good sense of comedic timing. I know you have Dylan Baker here, he's a character actor known for a number of projects, including Trick or Treat. I know he cameoed in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, or more recently had a role in Amazon's television show Hunters. So tell me a little bit more about how you went about casting the film. Was this script written with particular actors in mind, or did you sort of just have these character ideas mapped out and cast it later?
We never really, I know when we were writing it, Tony, he and I had conversations about what kind of gender dynamics and what kind of gender roles we wanted in this whole short. And I always wanted the main character to be a female. And I always had it in mind that it would be a sort of female having to sort of be deferential to a more cruel and severe male superior. And when Tony was writing the script, I know he had always had it in mind that it was going to be like a more superior female to a younger female, which again is a very interesting, rich kind of subtext to explore. But it just worked out that I had actually had a relationship with Becky and Dylan before this project, because I had worked on a project in Bartlesville that Becky was cast in, and we were shooting this film in Bartlesville for about 52 days. And so we just naturally hanging out with the actors, and we would end up at the same restaurant, and Becky would be there, and we would just talk and strike up a conversation. And eventually our conversations led to, I pitched her on a script that I had been working on with another friend of mine, and asked her if she'd ever be interested in reading it and considering herself for one of the roles. We hit it off. She said she really liked it and said, yes, keep me in mind. And we just stayed in touch after this movie ended. And it was only in that sort of hanging out that I realized that her husband was Dylan Baker. And Becky's she's just as equally like a iconic character actor in her own right. I mean, she's been in War of the Worlds with Steven Spielberg. She's been in as many Sam Raimi films as Dylan Baker has. I guess they're old friends with the Raimis, and she's the wife of one of the bumbling idiots in Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan. So they're like I don't know. I don't want to say they're the Bill and Hillary of character actors, because Bill and Hillary is its own context, but they're like that, his and hers, like, of famous character actors, I think, in modern kind of cinema. Plus Becky was Hannah Horvath's mom from Girls, which gives her a whole nother kind of appeal. But we had been talking about another project, and I felt like that project was still quite a ways off, because like all independent feature-length film trying to get made in Oklahoma, like, it's just impossible. So while that was waiting to happen or getting traction, I just said, hey, I'm writing this short film. We'd love to do it. And I think, if I can convince you to come in here and just pop in for a day, show up at the back end of the movie, or die in the first half of the movie, whoever, I would love for both of you guys to come out here, and I will do whatever I can to make it happen. If, you want to hang out in Tulsa for a few days and help me, make a short film. And they were very, very nice and very, very agreeable, and told that, they told me how I can make sure, to take care of them and bring them out here. And I did everything that, and that we could to make sure I knew I wanted to, a big part of me was that I knew I wanted to try to find ways that I could elevate the story in a way that immediately puts eyes on it, even if for some reason it just doesn't turn out good. even if like in my own ambitious head, it just sucks terribly. I at least wanted something that people would immediately like look to and have a shorthand association to like watch it and pay attention. I've been working in film and made short films and worked with other filmmakers long enough to know that like even a really great idea sometimes, especially in the festival market, which is its own sort of like insular world, that you need something to sort of really like elevate above the noise. And, I just wanted to really guarantee our opportunity to get as much attention out of it as possible, and not just on the merits of the hard work that the filmmakers put into it, because a lot of filmmakers put a lot of hard work into projects, but because it doesn't have a famous actor or, it's made locally, people oftentimes dismiss it, or they rule it out, or they just sort of say like, that's cute. Let's look at this film with so-and-so famous person that shot in Oklahoma for 2 weeks or whatever, So I wanted to make sure that I was helping the project be as successful as possible. And with my relationship with the Bakers, I just hoped that would be a good marriage and help, add to the value of the project, because I already felt like it was a really strong idea and a strong sort of intention that we had behind it. So they did me a huge favor by agreeing to it, and they were so nice about being, working with us. And a lot of the Oklahoma crew that works on a lot of other features worked on this. So it was a really great, they were really complimentary and really supportive of us and of that. And then to cap it all off, Danielle is just, to not overlook her, to overshadow her, like she did so phenomenal in holding her own against Dylan and Becky. And, I know actors, once you get in, once they yell action, it's just, you don't have time to sort of be starstruck. But, I know Danielle was really super into meeting Becky. Everyone else was super thrown away by both of them and their accolades. But Danielle just hold her own, and she like really handles herself really well with both Dylan and her scenes. And then in her scenes with Becky, it's a completely different sort of performance and role. And to see Danielle kind of juggle all these different sort of modulations of anxiety and control and panic, she just does a phenomenal job. And it's why the film is as good as it is, because she carries it so much. Dylan and Becky kind of get to come in and ring the bells of like, look, famous people, like good actors. But Danielle's really the one that like makes you believe it and makes you invested, and really you want to hope that she's going to be able to get out of the situation she's backed her in. And that's all because of Danielle's acting and performance. So she's a great actress. I was lucky to get her in this as much as I was Dylan and Becky. So
yeah. And again, strongly kind of grounds the whole short really, and kind of she does a really great job at really setting that tone of anxiety in the situation.
Yeah.
So
and she's kind of turning into a little like, she's almost like a Julianne Moore of the like Tulsa, the like Oklahoma indie scene, because she's in a bunch of Mickey Reese's films. Mm-hmm. She works with Brittany Caitlin Shelby a lot. I because of her work on The Chest, a friend of mine whose short I got to shoot after mine cast her in his film, and so we got to work all over again on that short. So Danielle is just, she's a secret weapon, I think, in a lot of filmmaking in this region, and I think she's out of Austin, but she's come up here a lot more. I've seen her on more projects shot in Oklahoma than I have in Austin, but maybe that's just because of the proximity. But she's a great actress.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I do want to take it to another character who might not be so obvious. In some ways, I feel like it's not obvious. In other ways, I feel like this is kind of a cliche question, but I do think it applies to this film. The house, of course, is very much, its own character. It really creates the tone and the atmosphere of the conflict that is occurring on film on the screen. How did you go about finding the best house? Did you like write this script based off of the house, or did you say, I wrote this script, now I got to go find the craziest house in the Oklahoma Tulsa area?
Yeah, we actually scouted and planned for a different house than what is in the film. We had originally looked at a different, Tulsa, like, I think very similar to like the bigger oil boom towns in Oklahoma. Like, it has its fair share of like oil magnate mansions and whatever that have now since kind of been reduced to just this really big house on a really small lot. And we were looking at several different sort of oil magnate mansions, and we had pretty much gotten locked in on one that was really great. It had for me, the biggest thing was I needed to find the right staircase. And I spent so much time like obsessing over what staircase we needed to throw the main character down, or the villain down, essentially. And so, I'd had some houses in mind, I'd had some staircases in mind, and we'd actually gotten in on the one that I had originally wanted from the get-go. And we were a few weeks away from shooting when the homeowner basically just ghosted us and stopped responding. And we were literally we were literally at a point where we were already starting to schedule shoots and schedule flights for Dylan and Becky, to the point where we were going to be shooting on October 28th and 29th, whether we were having a house or not. And we were getting very close to that. Fortunately, I've done lots of work in Tulsa as a location scout. I've worked in lots of local productions that I've been around in many different houses. And the one that we ended up in the film is actually like been sitting in our backyard this whole time. It's actually the mansion that my wife and I got married in when we got married 16 years ago. And it wasn't my first choice because it was so sort of Mediterranean and Italian influenced, and I wanted something a little more Gothic, a little more sort of ornate, with plate glass or stained glass windows, and very like European cottage influenced, and not so much like Mediterranean villa style. But when we went back in there, and from what I remembered from my wedding, I was just like, the interior could be perfect. So it has the right, the only thing is the staircase. We just have to make sure the staircase fits for like how we're going to do the physics of the fall. So we scouted it like 3 days before we were supposed to shoot, talked about the budget, made sure we had the right amount, and talked to the owner of the building. It's actually a house that's used for weddings and events and stuff like that. So they were perfectly suited for like, booking out the day like it was a wedding shoot or a photo shoot, and totally not inconveniencing any homeowners or anything. So it's a lot of the stuff that Danielle says in the short, a lot of the details about the forest and the wood where it comes from and the tile are all like details that the owner of the property gives when he's doing showings for people who are going to come there for weddings. And when he showed, I'd already heard this spiel 16 years ago, but my locations manager, my producer, our AD, none of them had been in there. So he gave them the spiel, and it was just like, all this is perfect dialogue for what we can just have her say. And all this detail is great. So like, we'll just incorporate it in there, and like, we'll use this house. Like, this is the house we'll use. It's perfect. There's lots of rooms that we can get in, and we can figure out how to block it. And it's got all the right kind of corners and heights of the ceiling. So it really worked out great. And it was one of those serendipitous moments that really made sure we were going to be able to make it the way we'd all kind of imagined it, without sort of compromising. Because the only compromise next was to start looking at like, these newer mansions, which just totally changes the dynamic and forces us away from the kind of Gothicness that we wanted to keep in the project. So yeah, it was luckily I've got married, I guess, is the secret to that story.
And you never know when getting married comes in handy for filmmaking, right? So.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't in any other instance yet. So my wife has been gracefully patient with all of it. So the one time our marriage actually works in favor for our film shoot.
Wonderful. Charles, we're going to start winding down here, but
sure.
I still have a couple questions up before we do. Is there anywhere that our listeners today can keep up either with your work specifically, or maybe other opportunities to find the Chest online?
We have sort of a very mild social media presence. On Facebook, you can find us at The Chest Short Film. It's all one word, The Chest Short Film. I think that's the same URL on our Instagram and Twitter.
Charles, we're going to close out. Is there anything else you'd like to say to listeners or attendees at dCFF20 before we close out the show today?
Yeah. Also, if you want to look for me particularly, like I'm most active on Instagram and Twitter. As a photographer, I obviously more gravitated to the photography side of social media. So you can find me on Instagram, and I probably post a lot more about the film there than anywhere else. And my username is Chaz Elmore _DOP. CHAZELMORE_DOP. Your other question, I don't know if there's any overarching thing to say other than just it's an honor to be part of this festival, and to have a film that's been made in Tulsa by other Tulsa filmmakers, and to be participating in dCFF20 along with a lot of our other Oklahoma colleagues and Oklahoma City colleagues is a real honor and a privilege. I've worked with so many of these filmmakers, and I've worked on so many of these filmmakers' films that for us to have to be part of, that community is a really big privilege for us and an honor. So, we're really happy to be part of a lot of these other films that, are included in the Oklahoma block, and, to be part of a really standout year, and a historic year too. So, it's just, I know that the Oklahoma Shorts are always a really great opportunity to highlight a lot of local talent and local crew. And so many crew in Oklahoma end up working on other projects that sort of come in, and we basically are just facilitating the execution of their process. But to see actual Oklahoma filmmakers telling Oklahoma stories that are pertinent to them and relevant to them and reflective of their community and culture, is very, very exciting and very, thrilling to be part of that, and to see a lot of these great diversity of voices and stories. So I think it's a great opportunity, and to be included with them is great for all filmmakers in Tulsa and Oklahoma City proper. So it's a privilege to be part of that.
Awesome. Well, Charles Elmore, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Caleb, thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right, wonderful. And now, for those of you out there who want to keep up with the chest, if you're listening to this while the dCFF20 Film Festival continues, which is until Sunday, June 21st, you can actually go ahead and buy tickets for either $10 per ticket as part of the Okie Short Mixtape Volume 2 block, or if you're a pass holder, you can just log on to the dCFF20 website and check it out there. For more interviews from dCFF20 2020, you can head over to the cinematropolis.com or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. Facebook or facebook.com/the Cinematropolis, and on Twitter @the Cinematrop. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. We'll catch you again next time.